Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to make this video because it is a topic which some of you guys have requested me to make a video on, and I wanted to make this video for a long time because I believe this is a very important topic, especially when you're working with either JavaScript or TypeScript, but also on many other languages because as you can see by the title, this video is going to be about the map, filter, and reduce functions, and they probably exist in like every single higher level language in the market nowadays. So basically, it is very important to know how they work and why you would use them. So that's exactly what I'm going to explain in this video. So you can see right here, the way I'm going to explain it is I have over here my code in a JavaScript file, and I'm just going to console log them, and you can see like the result here in the console log, right? So over here right now, I just have a simple array which contains these numbers, and I'm console logging the result over here. But the first example, the first function that I'm actually going to talk about is the map function. So the reason why I actually chose that is because it is probably the most famous one. It is probably the one that people use the most, and I think most of my subscribers already have a small idea of how it actually works because it is very useful in a framework like React. So how do we actually use the map? Well, what happens with map is, for example, if I want to create a new array here, called new array, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to actually loop through every one of those elements, and into this new array I wanted to add to it the value for this array, so like for example 1, and I actually wanted to add the value of this times 2, right? So I wanted to go through every single element in the array, and I wanted to append to the new array their value. However, after pushing it to this array, I want the value to be multiplied by 2. So normally what you can do is you can simply come over here and say something like, I don't know, for let I equals 0, I is less than array dot length, for example, then I plus plus. You're looping through every single element in the array using a for loop, right? And what you can do now is you can say new array dot push, and you can say array of index I times 2, right? You can do this, and in theory this would work, right? The new array here would contain all the elements in the original array. However, the elements would be each multiplied by 2. So let's check if that actually works. Let's come here to our Google Chrome. Previously, this is the array. It was no, actually, I think this is the multiplied array already. You can see it works, right? The original array is I'm even going to console log the original array as well. So array array. I'm going to show you guys. So you can see that the original array is 1, 5, 6, 4, 23. The other one is 2, 10, 12, 8, 46. So it's actually multiplied. But you can see that this looks very ugly. Why? Because honestly, for loops are very they don't look very nice when you're working with a large project. You want to definitely make your code look better, right? So how do you actually do this? Well, using the map function, this is very easy. What you can do is you can create the new array, and you can actually set it equal to the original array dot map. And what happens is that the dot map takes basically one argument for now. It can take more, as you can see right here. It can take a value, it can take an index, and it can take a callback function. So we're actually going to pass just a callback function, and what this callback function does is you can basically do like this. I'm just calling the function here. As you can see, it's an arrow function, and what you can do is you can put a variable inside of this argument for the callback function. For example, number. I usually call it vol, but you can put it whatever you want. And what happens is this number over here, what this map function will do is it will loop through every one of these elements. It will generate a for loop, for example, and loop through every one of these elements, and the variable number represents each number that you loop through. So not each index, but each value in the array. So for the first iteration, it will be 1, the second one will be 5, then 6, then 4. And inside of here, you have to return something. And what exactly is the return? Well, it's just the value that you have modified. For example, I want to return for each element in the array, I want to return the element, the number, times 2. So this is what it means basically. You're returning the modified version, and it is automatically going to insert into the array, right? So after we do this, you can see that new array is being console logged together with the array. So let's check to see if this works. Let's refresh the page, and yeah, it looks the same, right? The new array says that it is 2, 10, 12, 8, which is exactly 2 times the one from the first one, right? So let me give you another example. If I wanted to, I don't know, change this, right? I wanted to actually just say that I wanted to show. This means that you want to get the number to the power of 2, right? So what I'm saying here is I just want to change every single element to be an element to the power of 2. Same thing. If you come over here and refresh the page, you'll see that now it works. Every element in the new array is the element in the first array to the power of 2. But there's many other things you can do with this, and I'm going to show more vivid examples at the end of the video. What I mean by vivid examples is basically like working with objects, working with that kind of stuff that you would work in an application that is based on an API, right? Because these are great examples, but I believe that the most useful ones are if you're working with objects, because that's what you usually work when you're in the programming using a framework in the real life, right? So this is basically how map works. Now let's go into the filter function. Okay guys, so moving on to the filter function, I'm gonna give you guys an example here. Imagine that you have this array, which is the same array as before, the same numbers, and what we actually want to do is we want to basically just loop through every one of those elements, and we honestly just want to keep the elements that are below, for example, 5, right? We only want to keep elements that are lower than 5. So what we could do is, as I mentioned before, we could just come over here and say new array equals to this, and we could do a for loop like I mentioned before, like let I equal 0, and I is less than array dot length and I plus plus. And what you can do is you can ask inside of here very easily. You can ask if array of I, let me put a parenthesis here. I forgot it because I was working with Python, so I forgot to put parentheses. But for example, if you say if array I is less than, let's say 5. So we want to just keep elements that are lower than 5. So we want to keep in the new array 1, 4, 4, 2, and 4. So we want the new array to just be composed of the numbers that are lower than 5. So what we can do is we can say if array I is lower than 5, then new array dot push array I. So this is the idea, right? If we console log this, we'll see that it will just be an array containing the elements in the original array that are lower than the number 5. So let's check this. Let's refresh the page. You can see that now that works. It says 1, 4, 4, 2, 4. And that's perfect, right? However, again, similar to the map function, there's a very easy way of doing this. And the filter function actually works very, very similar to the map function. What you can do is you can create a new array here, const new array, and you can set it equal to the array dot filter. And the filter function also takes a callback function over here, which you can grab a number or an item. You can call this whatever you want, but it's just a function here that will be called and be applied for every one of the elements. And differently from map, it won't change the array. What do I mean by that is basically for each element you have to ask a question. It is going to keep the element no matter what. So the idea is that you have to return something over here similar to the map function, and what you return is actually a boolean. And if you say, for example, return true, that's a boolean, but it basically it will keep all the elements. If you return false, it won't keep any of the elements. New array will be empty. But if you return something like, well, for each of the elements, I just want to return those that the number is lower than 5. So what you're saying here is I'm grabbing each element will be represented by this variable, and I want to keep them. I only want to return those that are less than 5. So if we do this, we can very, very simply come over here, refresh the page, and you can see that the numbers are the same. The array continues the same because it actually satisfies the function that we put above. So you can see how easy it is to make this. You don't even need to like do it like this. You can actually just make it into one line if you want. Using this kind of functions are really great, and there's many use cases. I'm going to show a very good use case for the filter one at the end of the video, but basically this is the idea, right? You can keep, for example, I could just delete let me see, I could just delete all the 4 elements, right? So return elements if number is not equal to 4. So let's say this, right? Number over here, there's 3 elements which are 4, and we just want to keep those that aren't. So when I say this and I refresh the page, you'll see that all the 4s have disappeared from the array. So this is the idea of filter, right? You're just asking something, and if it satisfies this boolean, then it's going to keep it. If not, it will be filtered out. So let's now go into the reduce function, which is probably one of the most confusing ones. Okay guys, so finally for the reduce function, I'm going to use the same array, the same example, but it's going to be a bit different. I'm going to show you guys what happens. Let's imagine that we actually want, again, to create a new array. So const new array equals to this, and we want to just, for each of the elements in the new array, we wanted to just append into this new array a string saying something like number and then the value for the element. So number 1, then a string saying number 5 or number 6, number 4, number 23. You know what I mean, right? So to do that, very simply, we could come over here and say for let I equal 0, then I is less than array.length, similar to what we just did twice before, and I plus plus, and we can come over here down to the bottom, and we can say something like new array dot push, and we can just push something like number. This is as you can see, I'm using the back quotes, which basically allows me to insert JavaScript variables inside of here by saying money sign and curly braces, and now I can put a variable inside of here. The variable I'm just going to put inside of here is array I, which basically means I'm just, for the new array, every element will have number, 2 colons, and then the number, right? So let's check to see how this works. If I refresh the page, you'll see that it will be an array saying number 1, number 5, number 6, number 7. You can see, right, number 23. So now that we have this, I'm going to clear this. How do we make this easier looking, right? How do we make this look better? Well, we can use the reduce function. So to use the reduce function is a bit different from the other ones. So I'm going to say new array. I'm actually going to delete this one over here, and we're going to set it equal to array.reduce. And with the reduce, we have to actually grab 2 values, and we actually have to put initial value at the bottom. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to show you guys. Well, let's add the callback function here like we did with the other ones. So there is a callback function, but here at the bottom we have to put some kind of value. So we have to put a comma over here and some kind of value. What this means is, with the reduce function, you can actually keep track of many things. The 2 most important ones are the value of the actual, like, what you're actually returning. So I used to call it total. I like to call it total, and the current element. And I know this seems confusing, but I'll explain what happens. Well, basically, total is a cumulative value. For example, if you're looping through every one of the elements in the array and you're just calculating the sum of all the elements, total could easily do that. It will just keep track of all the addition of all the previous values, right? So what happens is number is similar to the one in map and filter, right? It just represents the current element. So what you can do here is actually you can treat total as an array. So I can come over here and say give it an initial value of array. So this over here is its initial value, and let's say that it is an array. So initial value, it will start empty, right? And what we can do here is we can just say something like return, and we can say total, and we can concat the total. So I know that seems weird, but what we can do is we can add to the total, which is an array already. We can add to the total the number, so number, and we can pass here, as I mentioned before, money sign and number. So what happens here, it will do the same thing. It will just create a new array, which will start as empty. This array is being represented as total. And for every element, we just want to add to that array the number, the string saying number, and then the individual number. If we run this, you'll see that it will work. If I refresh my page, again, it says number 1, number 5, number 6, number 4, number 23. There's many other examples. Let's imagine, for example, I want to grab the sum. Well, what we can do is actually we can turn this into a number. So it starts at 0, for example. So this is the initial value. So if you're just wanting to return this, so we just want to calculate the sum of all of the elements, right? So if we just keep it at 0, it will initialize at 0. So the sum is 0. Let's call this sum. And what happens is we can just return sum plus number. And I know this seems weird, but I'll explain what happens. For every element here, sum will start at 0, right? So it will come to the first element. This is number. So it will return sum plus number. So the first one is sum plus number. So now sum is 1 because 0 plus 1 is 1. Then it goes to the next one, and it's 5. So we return the sum, which is 1, plus the number 5. So now it's 6. So you kind of get what happens, right? This won't be an array. This will be actually just a number called sum. It doesn't necessarily need to return an array. It returns whatever value you put over here. So we put a number, it's going to return it. So let's check to see how it works. If I refresh my page over here, you'll see that it will say 54 because the sum of all the elements in this array is 54. So that's basically it for the very simple examples of those 4 functions. But obviously, as I mentioned before, I will show you guys some clear examples of using map and filter using objects, which are exactly what you will probably do if you're working with React, if you're working with Angular, Vue, any kind of framework with which you would usually get data from an API and you want to manipulate that data as being an object. So I'm going to show you guys how to work with those. Okay guys, so as you can see right here, I have an example. You can see that I have an array called users, and each element in the array is an object containing the information about a user. Currently, it only contains 3 pieces of information: an ID, a name, and an age. So imagine you're receiving this piece of data from a database or from an API, whatever you're getting your data from. So this is kind of like the standard, right? Usually you have an ID when you're receiving your data, and we're going to be using that ID very often when we're working with the map, reduce, or filter function. So let's imagine that actually what we want to do is we want to pass here the name of a user, and we want to remove a user based on that, right? So we want to remove a user called Pedro, all users called Pedro. So what we can do is we can come over here. Let's create a function called, let me call it remove user, and obviously it takes a string over here called name. So we have to pass a name, and the name will be user, will be Pedro. So we want to remove the user called Pedro. And what we can do inside of here is we can just say const new user array. So it's just a new user array. And what we want to do is we want to use the filter function in the users array. So users.filter. But what we're going to put here is we're going to put the current user as the argument for the callback function. And what we basically want to ask, remember that I said that with a filter function you want to ask a question, right? So the only elements that we want to keep from the users array are the ones which doesn't have the name equal to Pedro. So if we're going to pass Pedro over here to the name, what we can do is we can say, well, we want to return all the elements that have user.name not equal to the name that we passed in the top here of the array. And then basically we just want to return the new user array. So this is the idea. We just want to return the new user array. We create a new array containing all the users but Pedro, and we want to return it so that we can see it, right? So what we can do over here is we can just console log the remove user function, and we want to pass whichever name we want to remove. Let's imagine I want to remove Pedro. Let's see what this will console log. Let's come over here. Let's refresh the page, and you'll see that it returned 4 users instead of 5, and none of them are Pedro because it actually removed Pedro. And let me remove Jessica, for example. Jessica. You can see that again it will remove Jessica instead of Pedro. And usually when you're working with why you would do this, imagine in a to-do list application. You want to remove one of the elements, right? Well, you actually remove it based on the ID. You pass the ID, and you want to ask if user.id is not equal to the ID that I passed, then I want to remove. So I can pass here, for example, I want to remove Michael Scott. So I pass the ID 5, and now it will remove Michael Scott, as you can see right here. So this is the idea of passing the remove the filter function to remove users. But now let's imagine I actually want to change I don't know, the age of one of the users, right? So how do I actually do this? Let's keep the ID over here so we can keep track of which user we want to change. But let's imagine we want to change the let's say we want to change the age for real Ferdinand. Apparently his age is 126. Let's try to make it 127. So we can pass over here the ID, right, and the new age that we want to change, right? The new value for the age that we want to change. And let's change this function to change age. And over here, instead of using filter, what we actually want to use is map, because we want to change the element of the like one of the elements in the array, right? So this is the idea. So what we actually do here is we're gonna ask some questions in the map function. So what are the questions we actually want to ask? Well, if the current user that we're looping through dot ID is equal to the ID that we grabbed in the function, then we want to return, so we want to, for that value specifically, we want to return a new user containing the same ID. So user.id. So we're just returning an object containing the same ID, the same name. So user.name. We're just returning an object exactly the same, but the age won't be the same. It won't be user.age. It would actually be new age. So we're just passing the new age as the age. We're returning an object. And if it isn't the actual user, so if the ID isn't equal to the ID of the user we want to change, then we just want to return user. We just want to keep it the same. So let's see if that works. I want to pass the ID 4 because real Ferdinand is 4. And now we have another argument. I want to make him 127. Let's check to see if it works. Let's come over here. If I refresh the page, remove users not defined. Oh, because I changed it to change age. So let's change this. Let's come over here. Let's refresh the page. And you can see that there's 5 elements, but now real Ferdinand, the user with ID 4, has an age of 127, which means it's working. So this is the idea, right? And if you've worked with a to-do list in React or in other frameworks, you'll understand how useful this is, because working with both of these are fundamental to creating a project like that, and are essential if you're working with any kind of applications where you have some, I don't know, optimistic rendering. If you receive data from an API and you want to mutate it and it's part of a state, so that's exactly why it's hard to do it differently from this. So that's the basic idea, right? So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. I'm really enjoying posting these videos. I haven't had a lot of time in the past 2 days. I know I post every single day, but if I miss a day, I already feel really sad about it. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe because I'm posting every single day, and I see you guys next time.